I am now joined by a very special guest. It is the manager of the Bowie Baysox and my old pal. It is Kyle Moore. K-Mo, how are we doing?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me. Really excited. And it's a chilly night here in Sarasota. So the folks around here are bundled up, but not really. So doing well.
What's a chilly night in Sarasota look like?
Last night it was in the 40s. I
Oh,
know
okay.
people around here kind of go crazy when it gets down to that low. You'd think people are pressing the panic button, but it's probably 50 something out there right now. It's perfect, really. But no, it's a little cooler than usual though. So
Yeah, no, Florida winter. They just have no idea what to do. I want to take it back because, like I said, we've known each other since, 2019 now, which is just crazy that it's been that long. We did an interview. You were manager of the Delmarva Shorebirds at the time. You were super awesome with your time then. It was a really great time. And ever since then, I've just been like your biggest fan. So I just wanted to first say thank you for your time then, and thank you for hopping on today.
No, well, appreciate it, man. I need all the fans I can get in this business. You know how this business is, but I appreciate that, and I've always enjoyed our interviews, so I got no problem with hopping on with you, man, at any time.
I love it. So last time we talked a little bit about your time at the University of Alabama. You were a catcher there for 4 years, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the dynamic there because I know we talked about you were an awesome high school football player. And at the time, I think when you got to Alabama, it wasn't necessarily like the perennial powerhouse it is today. Like, did you go to that college think that you could potentially play two sports, baseball and football?
Yeah, I thought about it. I thought, man, that would be cool to do that. But I think once I set foot on campus and saw how the competition was in every sport and every position at every sport, I learned really quickly that it wasn't going to be, for me to play too. I one of my dreams as a younger kid was to play college football, so it was hard for me to let go of that dream. It was like I had to let go of it at 18. Do I either transfer somewhere and go play football, or do I just go? Maybe I could have gone to go play football right out of high school. So that was something that was definitely hard for me to let go of. It's hard for a young kid sometimes to let go of dreams, but one of mine was to play college football, and at the time I just thought, you know what, I really want to play professional baseball, and I want to play baseball for as long as I possibly can. So I'm gonna just do the baseball thing, and that's kind of what led me there. I never, once we were an okay team football wise at Alabama when I got there, and then the whole tide changed when Saban got hired. As you know, we had a pretty good year with Mike Shula one year, and we couldn't quite close the deal. I think Florida or somebody beat us, but Saban got there, and the whole culture and the whole environment changed, and so it was fun to be able to watch that from about as close as you can without being on the team, having sharing a workout, sharing a weight room, sharing some of the facilities, which we didn't get to share too many because he's really a stickler for that. But we did get to see a lot of how they do things and the intensity they bring. So that was beneficial for me for sure.
I'm fascinated by that dynamic because you're right. You go from Mike Shula, who was an okay coach, and then you just have Nick Saban come in and just light the world on fire. But did you notice that drastic change when Saban entered the building? Like, could you tell as soon as he got to Alabama that things were going to be so much different than they were in the past?
No, I mean, honestly, I mean, he's maybe the greatest college football coach of all time. But I always remind people when they're like, "Oh, he's an Alabama fan." We lost to La Monroe when I was in school there. I was in the stands, and we got our tails beat by La Monroe, and Nick Saban was the coach. So it wasn't like he came in and just started pressing buttons, and the next thing you know, his schemes just beat everybody. Um, the one thing I always tell people that we actually shared a parking lot with a football team, and the baseball field was right beside the practice facility in football. So when you pulled in the parking lot, you saw everyone who was at the football facility. It wasn't the football field, but it was their practice facility. And my wife and I were just talking about this the other day. In January, the baseball team's revving up. I mean, we're going pretty much 7 days a week. And every single day when we would go to the facility, that black Mercedes was out front before we got there in January as a team baseball practice. And it's like, what are you doing in January? But every single day he was there before we got there, and he was there when we left. So it was like, wow, man, like, um, with all due respect, I mean, yeah, we got beat by La Monroe and we had a terrible year his first year there, but he was doing something special then, and then all of a sudden it paid dividends later, which obviously the whole tide changed when we started getting better players there. But and I guess that's what he was doing. I don't know, but I know he was there all the time. I mean, 12-hour days in January. Come on.
Well, what is the old joke? It's like anything that Nick Saban does is just one thing that's taken his time away from like recruiting and drawing up schemes. It's like it's like the national championship that they've just lost. It's like, well, you know what? He'll get a head start on recruiting for the next year. But how much fun was that to be a part of the University of Alabama athletics at that time? I mean, there's so many, like you said, the big names started to trickle in football wise, like the Mark Ingrams, the Julio Joneses. Like, how much fun was that to be, sharing a parking lot and being close to those guys?
I mean, it was a blast. I mean, it was something that I kind of fell backwards into because like Nick Saban and all those great players weren't there when I signed there. So then you kind of I kind of fell backwards into it, and it was tremendous. I mean, it's like some of the greatest entertainment on earth is college football, and then here we have this big program with all these super players. I remember I got hurt once late in my career. I had a little elbow issue where I got some scope work done, and where I did my rehab was in the football facility, and they're really nice state of the art facility. And I would oftentimes find myself sitting right beside Trent Richardson, and it would be and I can always remember thinking like seeing him on TV, big dude, awesome, athletic, not really just whatever, not really thinking about it. I remember the first day he walked in and sat down on the training table beside me, and I could not take my eyes off of how big his arms were. And I was like, "Oh my god, this guy's arms are bigger than my legs, legitimately." And I was big. I mean, I wasn't small. I was like 210 pounds and big. And so that's when for me, I was like, maybe there is something different, in the water here. These guys are ginormous. I've never seen someone that big, and he was a tailback, and I was right there beside him as a physical therapist was probably making me cry at the time, but it was a special treat to be close to that program just as a fan. I mean, I'm a fan now. I'm just a fan, but to be an Alabama football fan the last 10 years has been, something we probably never see again, honestly. I mean, I don't know how anybody's ever going to stack up to that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Nick Saban. He came in, he started pressing the right buttons. The recruits started coming in, the long hours, all that. But as a coach yourself now, like, do you take anything away from how Nick Saban runs a program or just anything? I mean, obviously it's different sports, but being around, being a leader of men, do you take anything away from Nick Saban?
I mean, I do. I wish I could say that I had, more access or more of an inside information relationship with people that were closer to that. But I mean, I've read everything, all of the books he's ever written. I've really studied how he conducts his press conferences and his media. I think he certainly strategically uh, handles the media in a certain way that is, obviously the best. I mean, and some folks would argue that it's the best. So 100%. I mean, I study him. I study him, and I try to learn as much about him as I possibly can from as many resources as I can. And I still know a lot of people that are close with the program. Um, not that anybody's like giving me inside stories or anything like that, but our head athletic trainer for the baseball team was this lady named Ginger Gilmore, and she's now with the football team. Has been with the football team ever since Saban got there. And I get stories from people like that about just how intense he is and how great of a process he produces. So I definitely, if there's one thing that I probably have taken from how I think he does things, it's just that the process trumps everything. Like he's not out there trying to win ball games in January or February or March. He's not trying to win a ball game. And that's the same with me. I'm not out here thinking about how we're going to win a ball game in July in Bowie. It's about, are we going to do the right thing today to be a champion today in January? And I think that based on hearing him speak and reading the books that he's written, that's how he became great. He's a process oriented champion every day. January, April, May. I mean, the May, like what are most guys doing? Most guys might be at the beach or something. I don't know where he's at, but it probably ain't the beach. So
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I noticed from this past national championship, I watched like the post game press conferences. I think he had maybe the quarterback and one other player up at the podium with him, and he ended the podium. He ended his presser, and he was basically saying that like, the blame falls on him. It's not these guys' fault. Basically, just standing on the table and having his guys back at all times. which I had never really seen that side of him. Obviously, you see like the running out of the tunnel, the half times with Holly Rowe or whatever, but I just, that really stood out to me. Like, do you think that the unabashed, like having your guys back at every facet of the game, do you think that's something that more people should do? And is that something that yourself, you try to emulate?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, because that is another thing that I try to take from him every chance I get to watch him. I remember when he told Bryce Young and the linebacker, I can't think of his name, but to sit down, and he basically said he didn't want their, this season to be defined by one loss. And these guys played their tail off in order to just, I mean, they're down whatever they were down to Auburn with a couple of minutes left, and they shouldn't even been really played in the national championship game had those two guys not played phenomenal for the last parts of the season. So respected the heck out of that. I think probably even bolder of a moment was a few years back. I don't remember the player's name or who it was, but he had the back of a player once that had some serious off-field issues. He had broken some team rules. He had some serious off-field issues. The one thing that I love about Nick Saban is he never tells the media what that player did to break a team rule. That's the first way I think he has the players back tremendously. And the second thing is I remember him saying something to the media like, "What do you guys want me to do? You want me to kick him off the team? You want me to ridicule him? You want me to do this and do that and that?" And so he truly cared about the kid. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted the kid to be a great man. And it was obvious, and it was like real. It was real. It wasn't like he was just saying that because all the cameras were on. You know what I mean? Like, he truly had the kids back, and he was going to do everything he could to make that kid understand what it took to be a great person whenever Alabama football was over. And I think that's why you see so many players come play there, and also why so many why the culture that they have is created, because he does, man. He has players' backs no matter what. He doesn't air out grievances. Everything's in house, and it's fun to watch, man. I tell you what, it's fun to. Sometimes, a lot of the times, I find myself watching the game, and I don't even listen to the game. I'll just watch it. I'll be moving around doing something, whatever. And then that press conference comes on. I'm like, "Everybody, be quiet. Hang on." I'll turn up to about 60. I'm like, "Let me hear let me tune in real quick. What do we got? What do we got here?" So that's me. That's how I watch Alabama football.
He's the gold standard in every facet of the game. So you, as a manager of the minor leagues and also a college coach, you have a lot of similarities. We talked about, like, you're managing guys in your late teens, early 20s. It's a very formative time in these guys' lives. Like, is that a responsibility of a manager, but also kind of a mentor, something that you take lightly?
No, I don't take it lightly at all. I mean, that's something that I if anything, take super serious. With a professional level is different, because I would say that you're not necessarily asked to be a mentor. You're not necessarily like expected to be this person that cares about another kid, but I am, and I do, and I think that like when I tell all the younger coaches that ask me, or when I talk about spring training and what we want to get out of spring training, I always tell everybody that our number one goal in spring training is to start building elite relationships, because no matter what type of information you have with the player, everybody got the same information in baseball really now. The information is getting so crazy that you could get anything. I mean, you could type on this thing and you could pull up anything about anybody from the time they were 12 to the time they are however old they are now. Everybody's got the same information. But how elite is your relationship going to be with that player as a person, as a true, honest, just person? So that whenever that coaching moment presents itself, when it sets it on the tee, are you going to be able to jump on it? Are you going to be able to tackle it? And I tell all of our young guys that all the time, like, look, don't be overcoaching in spring training about a guy's mechanics and this, that, and the other. Build an elite relationship with them. Build an elite relationship with them. So then when May gets here and you really got to tell him something, and you need him to hear it, you need him to take it to heart, you've built that elite relationship. And so that's where for me, it's not just baseball. It's really not baseball at all. Baseball is our sport, and I love it, and it's the greatest game ever. But it's about building a elite relationship with a player, so that also, hey, one day when this guy's 7 years out of play, and he's going to call me and say, "Hey, dude, what you got on this?" And I'm going to say, I'm going to shoot him straight. And I'm going to love him. I'm going to love on him, and I'm going to tell him, just like I told him when he was 21 years old, when he was probably sitting in my office in Aberdeen. So that's what it's about for me. I take that ultimately serious. That's on the very, very top of my list.
I figured back when I interviewed a whole bunch of guys on the Shorebirds, literally everybody I talked to had nothing but glowing reviews of just like the way you handle a dugout, just like the way you foster such a great positive work environment for those guys. So I thought that was awesome. And I really wanted to bring that up. I did want to ask, so from the University of Alabama, how did you get into the Orioles farm system? I don't think I ever asked you about that. How was that transition to pro ball like for you?
It was a crazy ride. It was a very unlikely, thing that happened to me. I never got drafted, which has always been a little chip on my shoulder, especially then having played in pro ball. And to be quite honest, you play next to guys and you're like, he got drafted in the 15th round and I didn't get drafted. Really? What? Like 24th round? What? Really? Like we had 50 rounds when I was getting drafted and everybody told me no thanks, So I'm like little chip on my shoulder, maybe a big chip on my shoulder. I don't know. Didn't get drafted, was a 5th-year senior, which is probably why I didn't get drafted, because I was already ancient by the time I was playing really good in college. I was older. So I stuck it out in college because I really wanted to play in the College World Series, which we fell one game short of once. University of North Carolina beat us. I'll always hate them for it. Daniel Bard and Andrew Miller, golly, those guys stink, man. God dang, come on. So anyway, that was my college story. And then I stuck it out because I wanted to go to Omaha. I wanted to play in the College World Series. That's why I stayed there for 5 years and stuck it out. So by the time I'm done with college, I'm old and nobody wants to draft me. I get an email from a guy halfway across the world in Australia that says, hey, we're kind of trying to get baseball back to Australia. Would you have any interest in coming over here to Melbourne, Australia, and playing in a winter league? And who knows what will happen? So I do it crazily, based all off on emails, basically emailing some guys from Melbourne. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. They sent me a plane ticket, so can't be fake, right? I mean, I can't be getting duped here. They sent a real plane ticket from Delta from Atlanta to Melbourne. So I got on a plane. So I get on a plane, I go to Australia, I start playing baseball in Australia like a couple days a week. I get a part-time job, I get a job, and I'm working, and it's awesome. And it's an awesome experience. And so I play in this one tournament one weekend where there's a group of guys. It's kind of like a little state ball tournament. It's a group of guys coming from kind of all over the country, and I play really well. You get a bunch of hits, throw the ball great, play really well. There's this guy sitting in the stands named John Stockstill, who at the time was our international scouting director for the Orioles. And there's a bunch of scouts in the stands, but whatever, I played in the SEC, all of them said no to me. So those guys can get lost. I don't care about scouts. So who are those guys? So at the end of the game, John Stockstill comes up to me and he says, hey, son, what part of Australia are you from? And I said, actually, I'm not from Australia at all. I'm from Alabama. And he's like, whoa, oh, okay, cool. So he goes, do you want to come to spring training? I really like how you caught the ball and received and threw the ball well. We're a couple of catchers short. Would you have any interest in coming to spring training? And I said, absolutely. Before he got the sentence out of my mouth, but before he got the sentence out of his mouth, I said, send it and I'll be there. So he, like 2 weeks later, through a bunch of other emails, he sent me a contract with the Bluefield Orioles on it, and I signed it as fast as I possibly could and sent it back and paid all the postage and just was like super ecstatic. And so they moved my flight up from Melbourne to Sarasota like an extra month or two because I was supposed to be there for a while. And then I flew into Sarasota, and I've been with the Orioles ever since. Craziest thing. I mean, all the teams that could have drafted me, that I could have signed with, that could have said yes but said no, from playing, at Alabama, where we had many first rounders and tons of guys drafted. And it just happened to be the Orioles. It happened to be John Stockstill, and I'll always love him. He later on became the farm director and all that. And, it's just how baseball is, but I'll always love that guy for offering me that contract with the Orioles as a free agent halfway around the world in Australia. And here I am. Been with them since 2010. So
that's fascinating. I had no idea that, I never knew about the winter ball story about that. That's fantastic. So I was doing my research and I saw that in addition to catching, were you a relief pitcher at one point? Did you come in and throw the ball a little bit?
Yeah, I wasn't a relief pitcher, but I came in a game once in Lynchburg, Virginia. Orlando Gomez was the manager, and we were getting our tail beat. It was out of reach, and it was maybe the first or second game of the series or something. And we had a really good club. We had a chance to win the league, and we won the league that year. So we had a really good club, and he didn't want to use the bullpen. And we had always joked, and he'd always poke back and forth at me. And he's like, "Man, I bet you could pitch. I bet you could pitch." And whatever. I said, "I'm your guy. I'm your guy. If you need an inning at a position player." And it always happens like that. Somebody's always joking around until that moment where he walks down to him and he goes, "Hey, could you give me an inning? Could you give me the eighth? We're on the road." And he didn't want to burn another guy. He goes, "Hey, dude, could you give me the eighth?" And I go, "I got you. I'm in." Go down to the bullpen, warm up a little bit, get in the game, throw up a 0. So now for the rest of my life, I get to tell all of our relief pitchers I got a 0 ERA in the Carolina League. So if anybody wants any advice, just where to come to, right? Because I got 1 inning with a 0, and the center fielder made a diving catch. So who knows what would have happened if we wouldn't have been out there, playing our tail off in a 13-1 game. So.
Yeah, lowest career ERA, minimum 1 inning pitch. That banner will fly forever. When you talk about bringing a guy that's not a pitcher into pitch, like how often do you do that now in the minor leagues? Does that happen to the point where you're getting like beaten so bad that you have to go like look down the bench and see who maybe has pitched a little bit in the past or just has an awesome arm like you did back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, when you give up a really crooked number early in the game, I mean, everybody who tells you they don't think about flying, they think about it. But I think it's a little bit of I do everything I can to not throw a position player. I mean, if I throw a position player, you can guarantee that I've exhausted all of my arms, especially at the levels that I've been coaching at, because it is a developmental level. It's about developing players. It's not about winning the game. It's not about winning games at all. So I'm not going to throw a reliever in the first game of the series so I can save my bullpen. I feel as though it's a little bit disrespectful, and also, God forbid, an A-ball, an injury or something happen, which I have seen before. I have seen an outfielder pitch and hurt his arm, which is a really bad look. So I stay away from it. I mean, I stay away from it unless I absolutely have to, and I might have to one day. I just think that if you got any bullets in the tank from a pitcher, you got to throw them. You got to throw them. And
Yeah.
you know what? Tomorrow, if I got to ask the Orioles to send me 4 guys on an airplane, I'll do it. But I ain't gonna throw a second baseman or something unless I just absolutely have to.
I'm trying to think, wasn't there a guy in 2019 you had in Delmarva? I think he went to the University of Florida and he was like an outfielder that was like a pitcher in college, but he always just wanted to pitch.
It
Who
was
was
Nick
that?
Horvath. Nick
Nick
Horvath
Horvath.
is left-handed thrower, right-handed hitter, and he could really pitch. He pitched in JUCO, and he was like an elite thrower too. So he's one of those guys that's always so tempting. Because like I know Horvath can pitch. He pitched in the SEC, and he's a lefty. Like if I get in a spot, can I bring a lefty in to face the bottom of the lineup lefty that I know he's going to get him out because he's going to throw strikes. But he's an elite thrower from center field. He's going to throw gas and he's going to throw strikes. And so I would always fight that. I'm like, no, Nick, you can't do it, dude. Sorry, bro. Come on. He's like, we'd get up or down. He's like, hey, he'd always walk by me, Cable, if you need one. I'm like, dude, it's so tempting to use you, but I got a couple of relievers that I got to get an inning this week, and I don't know when we'll get them in there. So we got to go with them, instead. But I'm not gonna lie. There's sometimes when a guy either gets thrown out of the game or we end up hitting our pitcher. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I think, man, it would be fun to see Nicky Horvath face this guy right here. I wonder if I could bring Nicky Horvath in to face Julio Rodriguez from West Virginia and see what happens.
Yeah, throw him a bone. So you never let him pitch. You just always was just talking about it.
Never did. It would just
No.
never, it never presented itself to where I wouldn't look like an absolute idiot in the box score if I did it. Got 3 relievers with a couple innings availability. I can't throw Nicky. So
That's so funny. So yeah, I mean, when you went back to when you played though, you played in the Orioles minor league system at the same time as so many household names. I mean, we're talking about Machado, we're talking about Scope, like to watch those guys at the level that they were at when you guys were playing together. Like, what was your relationship like with them back then? And did you just immediately know that they were just going to like blow up into superstars?
I didn't, because I had those blinders on as a player. You don't know. You're just worried about you and how you're going to get a hit that night because you're 0 for 6 or whatever, like I was at the time. And you don't really know. I mean, I think with Machado was probably the one where my eyes were first open to like, oh my goodness, like who is that? Like, even though you still had your player blinders on because you're worried about what you got to do, here comes this kid and he's just like got this glow about him and it's just really special. Like everything he does is special. Everything. I mean, so that was my first experience with a player like that. And he since has proven to be that person. My story with Scopey is funny because both those guys are amazing. I love them. If I saw them today, they'd give me a big hug, and I love them as people. They're great people. So that helps. I mean, that helps when your best players are also awesome people. That helps. When I first saw Jonathan Scope, we were both stuck in extended. I was stuck. He wasn't stuck in extended in Sarasota, and I remember thinking, "Dang, I'm so pissed off because I'm an extended, but this sucks." And we'd go out there, and there was this really uncoordinated kid, and I'm like, "Who is this kid? He's uncoordinated. He can't even catch the ball. He looks like he's swinging underwater. Like, what is going on?" Well, later on in extended, I found out he was 16 years old. So like obviously, like I was 20, whatever, too old to be an extended, and he was 16. So obviously, he looked like he wasn't very good. I'm telling you, the next year he showed up and I didn't even recognize him. It was like, I don't know who that is, but that's not the 16-year-old I just saw in extended last year. I'm talking grown man, like a couple inches taller, bigger, swinging a bat with tremendous bat speed, best hands I've ever seen. And it was like, oh, that's why I'm not a scout. So I'm a 23-year-old minor leaguer, right? Because didn't see that coming at all. So Scopey went like this. It was like, who is this kid? And then all of a sudden he was in the big leagues and he was like an all-star. But with Machado, it was like at first glance, it was like, oh my, wow, like superstar, I guess. I guess that's what one looks like. So
you mentioned being in your mid 20s in the minor leagues. Like, were you ever self-conscious about that? Because like you said, there was guys that were, I mean, 16 is an anomaly, but like most of the time guys that coming in there are probably 3, 4, 5 years younger than you were. Were you self-conscious at that point?
a little bit. When I got stuck in extended, I think I might have been 24 years old or something. And I got sent to extended, and I thought, man, like it's time to start thinking about what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Because here I am, and the average age of a big leaguer is 28 and a half, but still, like I'm looking around me, and I got a bunch of kids around me. So there was definitely something to it. It was for me, it was more of a pride thing. It was about playing the game for as long as I possibly could, uh, making the club rip the jersey off my back because I'd played this game forever. I played it since I was 5, and I wasn't about to just throw in the towel because I was the older guy and extended. So, um, I remember first getting called out of extended to go to Delmarva and then go to Frederick and then Delmarva and being so happy because now I was 24 and I wasn't in extended anymore. And I was around a bunch of guys that were probably 23, 22, 21. But I will say at the time, our organization was not nearly as conscious of age as they are now. Like now, we want to be super young every level. We want to be super young. We want to push guys. And I wouldn't have lasted a second in that organization because I was old when I started. But I'm thankful for the time I had, and I'm also thankful that at the time I was afforded some opportunity, in A ball because catching depth is really hard to come by. I think minor league depth in general is hard to come by. Period. It's just hard to keep guys healthy through 4 levels of play, 5 at that time it was 6 through 120 plus games. It was really difficult. So that's how I got my foot in the door. So
Yeah, and also like you were a catcher for so long. I've always heard like catchers make great managers. Like I don't know, like I mean, obviously it's true now, but I've always just heard that's a thing. Like, did anybody before you got into coaching say, "Hey, you would make a great coach someday," or how did like the idea of coaching get like implanted into your brain?
yeah, I mean, I never I think I kind of always knew honestly because just from a really early age, like I didn't know what I was going to do if I didn't do this. So there's a great song on the radio now by Luke Combs. It's like, what would you be doing if or it's like, well, I'd be doing this.
Mhm.
I have a Friday night crowd in the palm of my hand. Well, what would I be doing if I'd be doing this? I'd be doing some 9 to 5, and I'd be coaching ball on the weekends on some travel team. That's what I'd be doing because that's who I am, or what part of who I am. So I think I always knew. I think I always knew. I didn't know if it'd be football or baseball, but I knew it'd be one of the two. I'd be on the sidelines or in the dugout somewhere. And then I'll never forget one of the greatest people I've ever met was this guy named Don Werner, who was a cancer survivor and one of the greatest human beings you'll ever come into contact with. Extreme mentor in my life. And I'll never forget one day I was playing. I was a player and I wasn't playing much and I probably wasn't playing well. And I'll never forget him telling me, he's like, "Hey, you're gonna make a great coach one day. You're gonna make a great coach one day. Stick it out, grind it out, And, you could work in the GCL and you could work in Florida. You could work your way up. This is a good career. You ought to think about it whenever the time comes. Just think about it. He's like, I'm not telling you this tomorrow, but you need just remember I told you this and think about it. And I was always really close with Donnie. I was always really close with him. But after that, we became super close. And I would ask him things then like, hey, futuristic what if questions about, hey, what if I do become a coach? What was your journey? How did you become a coach? And Donnie was a great player. He played in the big leagues and he caught a no hitter and all that. So he was a phenomenal player. So nothing like me, but he was there to sort of give me that first, that first maybe glimmer of hope that, hey man, you maybe could coach a little bit one day. And if it wouldn't been for him, I don't know if I would have believed in myself enough to do it. But so you just love people like that. And also people like that is why I coach. I always tell people you coach for two people, the coach that you hate and the coach that you love. That's why people become coaches. The coaches in the middle that you don't remember, nobody ever, just like I say, you don't remember them. But you coach because you don't want to be the guy that stunk, that you hated, that's kind of, took you down a wrong path. And you do want to be the greatest couple of coaches you've ever had. You want to be that guy for somebody. So Donnie was one of those people for me.
So you're like your coaching journey and your path that you took to get to being a manager in the minor leagues. It was interesting because I think you started as a strength and conditioning coach, right?
I did. Yeah. I'll never forget it. I sat on a golf cart one day with Brian Graham and he said, look, you ain't going to make a team. What do you want to do? And I said, dude, I want to coach. And he's like, well, really all we kind of have right now is strength and conditioning. And I said, well, I graduated from Alabama with an exercise science degree, so I can do that if you want me to. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah, seriously. I mean, I'm not making that up. I really did. And I said, right on the spur of the moment, I said, I'll go to Delmarva, I'll throw BP, I'll coach first base, I'll be the strength coach, I'll do everything. I'll do anything and everything you need me to do. I'll be the fourth coach, I'll be on a player contract, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So he goes, all right, well, and all the time in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Donnie Warner told me this was coming. Donnie told me. So I was kind of ready for it because I kind of saw the spring training working roster. This ain't going to work out. A couple of guys got $1 million and a couple of young guys. This ain't going to work out. So when we had the conversation, I was kind of ready for the pitch. And I said, I want to coach. Let me coach. Let me go to Delmarva. Let me be the strength coach. If that's all you got open, let me do it. And so Brian said, all right, I want you to go over and I want you to meet with Brady Anderson. And so I'm like, that's scary. Like, that's a big name that I watched as a kid play ball. And I don't know Brady from anybody except for just being kind of a little bit maybe starstruck when I see him because that's Brady Anderson, Orioles legend. I watched him as a kid. So I go over and I talk to Brady and I wait for Brady to meet with me. And we develop a relationship and lucky for me, Brady loved Olympic lifting. And one of my greatest mentors at the University of Alabama, Rocky Colburn, loved Olympic lifting. So I knew a lot about it and I did it a lot. And so I had been in Olympic lifting since I was about 15 years old. And then Rocky kind of really cleaned me up. And then lo and behold, like I could clean and snatch and jerk. And I knew a lot about Olympic lifting. And I just happened to meet Brady, who loved Olympic lifting. And so here he was, he was, kind of interviewed me. It was kind of an interview process. Hey, you go over and meet Brady, hang out with him for, I think I ended up hanging out with about 15 days at the end of spring training. And eventually he kind of signed off like, yeah, this kid can be a strength coach. And that was another way. I mean, sometimes you take the craziest, roles when you're young and you don't know what you're going to do. And that was one of them. I took that role as a strength coach, went to Delmarva, coached first base through BP every day. Spent 15 hours plus at the facility every day, and I loved every minute of it. I think I made about $15,000 that year, so it was worth it, and I loved it.
For love of the game, yeah. It's also just a great advice in general. Just say yes to things. Like I think so many people are so hesitant to do that kind of thing. But how were you able to parlay that? So you were strength and conditioning, then hitting coach, I think. Then how did manager come about? How did you kind of parlay your different roles to the role you have now?
Just the craziest turn of events happened, just like it always does, or always seems like it's just a recurring story in my baseball journey. I was a strength guy. I was really lucky as a strength guy. listen to the start. The starting pitching was the guys that I trained. That was really the position players, kind of maintenance, whatever. I had Dylan Bundy, um, Tyler Wilson, Parker Bridwell, Tim Berry, and Eduardo Rodriguez were my 5 starters that I was when I first got out the gate. I was the Delmarva strength coach. I was chomping at the bit. Brady said, "Those are your 5 guys. Don't mess it up." Right now, all of them were great players. They were great players, and so I didn't even know what I was doing. I was out there just writing stuff down, being a exercise scientist, trying to train those guys. I think that helped. That team in Delmarva was a really talented team. So I think that helped anybody who was coaching them, because great players make great coaches, and anybody that tells you differently is silly. But that helped. And then what happened was the next year after that year, Brian Graham, our farm director at the time, came to me and he said, "Hey, dude, what do you want to do? You want to do the strength thing, or you want to do this baseball thing?" He said, "Brady wants you to do the strength thing. He wants you to be a strength coach. So, if you don't want to be a strength coach, you need to tell him that. And if you want to do baseball, I want you to do baseball." So I was like super torn. Like, do I call Brady and say, "Brady, I don't want to be a strength guy anymore"? Because I know he's going to say, he's going to get mad, and we're going to end up talking about strength. And then we're going to end up, having a good conversation about strength, and I'm going to be a strength guy again. And because I loved Olympic lifting, and at the time I loved training guys like Dylan Bundy. He's one of the funnest people I ever trained in my life. So at the end of that year, Brian said, "Look, I'll offer you a job to go be the 4th coach in Frederick. Do the same thing you're doing now, just don't be the strength guy. Instead of devoting all your energy into strength, I want you to devote all your energy into helping this young kid named Michael Ullman be the best catcher he can be." And I said, "That's what I want to do." I said, "That's what I want to do." I at the time I knew that I really didn't want to stick with strength and conditioning because it wasn't my passion. I mean, I loved it, still do, still train, still like to do that kind of thing, but it just wasn't my passion. So I picked that one, and I had to have a couple uncomfortable conversations with Brady and tell him I wasn't going to do it no more. And luckily Brian helped me out and got me in. I was the 4th coach in Frederick on a player contract, coached first, did all that. The next year I was a 4th coach in Bowie on a player contract and did the same thing, coached first base, went with the same players, same couple of catchers, try to help them develop. Next year was big for me because I went to Delmarva to be the 4th coach again, to be my 4th year in a row now, not being on a coach contract. I was on a player contract again, making pennies, which was fine because I was young and wasn't married, and all was great. And then I met a great hitting coach named Howie Clark, phenomenal dude to be around. And Howie helped me a ton in learning how to be a good hitting coach. And so from there, I became a hitting coach. Brian offered me another job as a hitting coach from Delmarva. So I jumped all over it again. He said, "What do you think about being a hitting coach?" And before he could get out of his mouth, I said, "Yes, absolutely, 100%. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do." I did it. And then, how I got to be the manager. I always knew I wanted to manage, but it's always funny when you tell people that, because if you're a hitting coach and you tell somebody you want to manage, that don't look good, because then the manager thinks you're behind them going, "Yeah, I wouldn't put that guy in. Hey, I definitely play the infield in here. What's he doing?" So you don't want to tell nobody that. You don't want to be like, "Hey, like, I want to manage, but I'm the hitting coach, but I want to manage." I mean, then you got to go to the cage and you got to come on, like, you just got to be what you are at the time. You got to, if you're the hitting coach, that's what I tell a lot of our young guys. If you're the hitting coach, you got to try to be the best hitting coach in the world in A-ball. That's where they put you. Like, just be the best one in the world at what you're doing right now. So I got at, so I was doing that, right, and I was loving it, having fun. Kevin Bradshaw, who's now with the Phillies as their field coordinator, and I love him to death, was supposed to be the manager in Aberdeen. He was slated to be the manager in Aberdeen. He took the club all the way through extended spring training. And at the end of extended spring training, he went to a trampoline park with his daughters and blew out his Achilles. And it was the worst thing ever. And ever since then, I always joke with KB, I love him for it. Because when that happened, they said, "Well, KB can't manage Aberdeen. Who's going to do it? We got nobody." So I'll never forget the day the farm director came in and he called me into the office, and I thought, "Oh my God, what did I do wrong now? Like, I must have pissed off somebody. Like, I must have really messed up." And he goes, "Hey, get your stuff together." And I'm like, "Oh Jesus, what?" He's like, "Because you're going to Aberdeen tomorrow to manage their club for the rest of the year. And I said, tomorrow? What? Like, I'm the Frederick hitting coach. And I'm like, I think he's joking with me, right? The equipment manager was in there. Our current manager, Ryan Miner, was in there. And I'm just like looking around like, all right, somebody said, somebody's telling me the punchline, you know, and like, this ain't real, you know? So they said, no, I said, I'm serious. KB tore his Achilles and I need you to go there tomorrow and run a workout for 3 days and then manage the club. And I'm like, here we go. You know, like, then that's how it happened. And I felt so terrible because I had to leave behind my 13 hitters that I had worked my tail off with in Frederick. And I built up so many good relationships with these guys. And I had some great players, but I had some really, really good relationships. So I felt terrible about it. But I had to go to Aberdeen and you know, that's where my managing career started. But it was one of the best things ever happened to me. And I fell in love with managing from the first second I ever got to write the first practice schedule. So
and the rest is history. That's right place at right time. I think that's fantastic. I am curious about something because you've been with the Orioles organization. I think you've said for well over 10 years now. Many different regime changes have taken place since then. When you talk about Mike Elias and the current regime, like what did they tell you when they came in about what they wanted done, like how they wanted things done developmentally, what kind of things they were emphasizing that maybe they weren't in the past? Like what kind of took place when Mike and Sig and all those guys took over?
yeah, it was a real interesting sort of time where you're, you know, I didn't know what to think. I was part of the old regime or the old two regime. I hadn't seen, you know, 3 GMs and 4 farm directors and all that. So I didn't know what to think, but the first thing that was made really clear was that we were going to use and develop with technology and data that we had not done before, which was completely an education for me because I didn't have that experience. You know, I mean, I didn't know we have this, you know, all these new pieces of technology, you know, that we use, whether it be Edgertronic cameras or K-Vest on players and biomechanical analysis and all this stuff that was kind of there, but we didn't use it as an organization. So that was the first thing that they brought in. That was like, hey, look, we're going to use this stuff to develop players. We're not going to use one thing specifically, but we're just going to use all of it to help sort of everybody that we can with every piece of technology that we can. So that was the first thing that I learned about them. You know, it was weird for me because I didn't know what was going to happen. You know, and, at the end of that Aberdeen season, they told me, look, you might have to go back and be a hitting coach because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, you're just managed and it was great. You did a great job, but just hang in there. I don't know what's going to happen. So then when Mike got here, when they asked me to go to Delmarva and manage in 19, I felt really good about it. You know, about, okay, well, they're going to ask this new regime can ask me to manage. Like, here's my opportunity. Let me go do this. And then they gave me a great club, which I don't know if anybody knew we were going to be a great club because we didn't even know what we had, truthfully. But out trots Grayson Rodriguez and Blaine Knight and all these guys, Drew Rom and all these guys, and then we were great. And so I felt from that point, I felt like, okay, like this is really good. Like, you know, this new GM, this new regime gave me an opportunity, and I feel like I made the most of that opportunity, that small opportunity they gave me. So ever since then, it's been just about using all of your resources, all of your data, all of your information, use your technology, and then also, you know, just creating an environment as a manager that facilitates all that sort of props up all that helps your developers, your pitching coach, your hitting coach, your developmental coach, your fundamentals coach, help all those guys do their job, you know, elite, and you'll be fine. And that's what we've done. And so that, you know, you can't complain about any of that. So it's been a pretty fun ride. And then you know, not to knock the other past players we had, because I was one of them, but the quality of player since those guys got here, kind of straight up, like quality of player top to bottom, much better, like much better. Now I don't know what they're using to pick them, and I ain't gonna ask, but it's good, whatever it is.
As a fan, from the outside looking in, I think that gives a lot of us like a lot of confidence. to hear somebody like you talk about just like the path in the right direction that we're going on. I did have one quick question. I was so curious because obviously in 19, you have that fantastic year with Delmarva. You have set a franchise record in wins. And then 20, you're supposed to go to Frederick, I think. And then the season got canceled. And then like there's a gray period, which I didn't know what was going on and what they had you doing. What did you do during the time that you weren't managing? And what have you done since then?
Yeah, it was a bad year. I mean, it was a fine year personally, but we were just getting ready to go to Frederick and have the best team that Frederick had ever had. And I was excited because the last time Frederick was that good, I was on that team with Machado and Scope and all those guys. And so very, very, down when that season got canceled because I was looking, I love the city of Frederick. I love the town. We're about to take this great team into town and beat everybody. And then COVID happened. It was like, dang. So personally for me, it was an interesting year because my wife and I bought an RV. We bought this 42-foot fifth wheel, right? That was going to be our plan. We were trying to solve a living arrangement problem that we have every year for how's our family going to live in Maryland for the summer. We have a mortgage to pay in Florida. All this, this stuff you go through, adversity you go through to be a minor league coach. So we come with this great idea. Hey, we're going to buy a fifth wheel. We're going to live in it. We're going to rent our house. We're going to live in the fifth wheel. So we do it. We rented our house. We bought a fifth wheel. We're going to live in it. COVID happened. We're like, man, we're not even going to go to Maryland in the fifth wheel. We're still in the fifth wheel. We're in Florida. Season's canceled. We're like, what do we do? We got this long, fifth wheel travel trailer. We have a 1.5-year-old. So we traveled. We drove the fifth wheel up to Alabama. We drove it all around, pretty much all around the country, and literally had the greatest summer of all time. The greatest summer of all time. We had a toddler. She went swimming in every lake in Alabama, and we just camped in the fifth wheel, man. We enjoyed so many campfires and grill out every night and all that. So it was great. It was a great summer, but it was different. Nobody expected it, and then I thought I was going to work the alt site, but I ended up not working the alt site, which was a little disappointing. But because you always want to work, you want to be asked to work everything. Ever since I've been with this organization, I used to start work on January 6th because some of the older guys, Showalter and Brian Graham and those guys used to ask me to be in town starting in January 6th and just go into the facility and just be there. Throw BP if they needed me to, catch a bullpen if I needed to, whatever. So from January 6th to February 15th, like I was the guy at the facility, just there for whatever. And so you always want to be asked. I was sort of ingrained to do that. So then when I didn't get asked to work outside, it sucked. But I was pulling my fifth wheel around the country and making a campfire every night. So we had a great summer, my wife and I, and my daughter Madeline. So
that's fantastic. Also, I think Frederick lost their affiliation too at some point during that, which I'm sure when they were when COVID was over and 2020 was over, and you were looking at the 2021, what did they kind of talk to you about? You obviously went to go manage Aberdeen, which I think became just low A at that point. Was that a weird time trying to figure out what your place would be after COVID and after Frederick lost their team basically?
Yeah, it was real weird. It was scary at times. I mean, you had people that, organizations that were shrinking, they were losing teams like crazy. So Aberdeen became the high A affiliate, and and Frederick lost their affiliation. When MLB shrank down some of those teams, and it was crazy because I didn't know what the organization was evaluating me off of. We didn't even have a year. We just had a new farm director be hired named Matt Blood, and we had a billion Zoom calls, and they were all great. And I had a really good feel for everybody that I was Zoom calling with. But when you're a manager, your bread and butter is your clubhouse and your dugout and your guys and your elite relationships that you're building. All of that was taken away. So what am I going to be evaluated on to get a 2021 contract? And that was the scary part. What are they going to say? They're going to say I did a bad job, good enough job. What are we basing that off of? A Zoom call? Because I'm a manager. I'm not a Zoom callist. I'm not a guy that just I'm not a media guy. I tried, did everything they asked. And I think a lot of people were in that boat. What are we doing? And what are we being evaluated on after not even having a season? And then lucky enough, they asked me to go to Aberdeen and manage a high A ball club, and man, it was fun. It was awesome, and I jumped all over it. And that facility was amazing. They have AstroTurf on the field, which I'm not a huge fan of. I like to play on grass, um, but yeah, that little transition period between 2020 and 2021 was hard. It was a stressful time for sure.
I feel like I would be doing people a disservice if I didn't ask you about two guys that you've managed in particular. I'm talking about Adley and Grayson. You've managed them. You've been up close around them for so long. Like when we talk about the ceiling that these guys have, like what can we expect as they inch towards their Baltimore debut?
Well, I mean, expect is a tough one. It's tough to put expectations on someone because it is the big leagues. I mean, it's the best players in the world, and it's the AL East. It's monsters now. I mean, it's a when you're playing in the NL West. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the AL East, and it's a tough league. Those two players are as good of people and as good of players as I've ever been around, and they have that same it factor that I speak of when I talk about Machado. Has like a glow about him, and he just does things that where you're just like always just in awe of. And Adley Rutschman has that. He has that. And Grayson Rodriguez is that talented. You know what I mean? I always tell people would ask me last year when he pitched for us in Aberdeen, which was high A. Every single time he pitched, the opposing manager would come out to do the lineup card the next night, and they would say, "What's he still doing here? My golly, get that guy out of here!" I'm like, dude, I hope he stays here forever. I mean, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Watching this guy pitch to A-ball hitters, he's throwing 100 with 4 pitches. So, I hate to say expectation. I don't know what expectations are. I just know that those two people are elite people, and they have a chance to be elite players in the major leagues. So, type of players that you probably would build your franchise around is what I think they are.
As a former catcher yourself, like, and I think the pitcher catcher bond is something that's probably one of, if not the most important thing. Like, how in sync do you think these guys are at this point in their career?
Oh, they're really in sync, and I think a lot of that credit goes to Adley Rutschman because when he first got with our club in Delmarva in 2019, he basically came to us for like the last week of the year. And probably the most impressive thing that I saw him do was completely develop a relationship with the pitching staff like that, and then just lead them like a champ. So I think a huge credit to Adley is those guys are close, and they're on the same page right now, like you wouldn't believe. And whether they play at the same level or not for X amount of days, that ain't going to matter because Adley has that sort of that it factor to really get them on the same page quickly. I mean, it probably wouldn't take you but a couple of meetings before they would be thinking right along with each other, and that's a credit to Adley.
Absolutely. All right, let's do a couple quick rapid fire questions. Thank you so much for coming on. So I'm friends with Johnny Reiser, and I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you because I went to one Ironbirds game last year and he did not start. So would you like to apologize for robbing me of an opportunity to see my good friend Johnny make like a highlight reel play?
I would apologize. I love Johnny Reiser, man. He can hit. Golly, that TCU Horn Frog can hit, and he can play defense too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rob a couple home runs every now and again. What have you liked from him as a player standpoint that you've seen so far?
Pure hitter. Guy could wake up out of bed and hit a line drive up the middle off 100 miles an hour. Like just that kind of hitter. You know what I mean? Like you just hitter. And then also, he's battled some some issues with staying on the field, and I think that's what his biggest thing is going to be. You got to keep him on the field. You got to work hard to stay on the field, and if he does, he's going to be a special player. He's a tough kid, love his mentality, love his makeup. Baseball instincts are right up there with anybody. But when you're writing out a lineup and you think who is going to get the big hit, Reiser is the first guy that pops in your mind. Like if they bring the closer in that's throwing 100, Reiser. If you're starting versus the Yankees, and I don't even remember the guy's name, throwing 100, Reiser homered off of. Like you need a hitter, Reiser's your guy.
Oh yeah, it was Syndergaard when he was at in
Well, he homered against Syndergaard in Aberdeen, but I'm talking about the
yeah.
prospect. I can't remember his name. And sorry, I can't remember his name. We went to face Hudson Valley this year. Johnny was playing for Aberdeen. We went to face Hudson Valley, and they had some of the best minor league pitching I've ever seen. Johnny Reiser homer. Homer guy's throwing 100 with a 96-mile-an-hour slider. Reiser takes him deep like he's throwing 80.
Pure
Because
hitter.
he just hit. He just
Yeah.
hit, man. He just hit. He's like, you know, it reminds me of is Nick Markakis. And now
Ooh.
that's a big one. That's a big one, I know. But Markakis can just hit. He can show up on live BP the first day and not even hit off a tee and hit a bullet off somebody. And Reiser's just like that.
I like, yeah, roll out of bed and get you 300. That's that. I think that's the kind of player we're looking at here. I'll have to tell him you said that. He's gonna like that. So I did a little reading back when you're going back to Alabama for a second. I saw, did you guys play a tournament in Cuba? What was that like?
We did. We played a Cuban international like friendly tournament. It was phenomenal. This was back when you couldn't go to Cuba. They still had an embargo, and it was like we had these agents around us all the time. It was crazy. It was crazy, really. We had like these police escort type deals everywhere we went. Well, we played this team. Funny story. I'll try to keep it quick because I know we're probably running short here. But we played this team. We show up and they brief us. They have these Cuban historians and they Cuban baseball historians. Baseball is phenomenal in Cuba, in a beautiful country. I mean, one of the most beautiful places you've ever seen. Baseball historian says, "Listen, guys, I know y'all are a pretty good college team, but we have big leaguers on this team, a bunch of big leaguers." And he said, "But you guys don't expect to even play a game that's even close here." And so we were like, "Is he saying we're going to blow them out, or is he saying they're going to blow us out?" We're like, "What's he talking about?" So he says, "They're going to blow you guys out. They're going to beat you by 15 every time." So we all laughed. We're laughing like, "No, they ain't. They can't blow us out." Like, we had big league players all over the field, you know, future big league players all over the field. We play the first game. A good buddy of mine, Kent Mathis, hits like a 3-run homer after I walked, and we tie them 5-5. And there's a bunch of guys you never heard of on the field. Cuban, like, must have been like an 1800 team or something. Good players, good looking players, but we tied them. So we come in, and the same couple of Cuban baseball historians come in, and they're like, "We just want you guys to know, like, that was the greatest thing we've ever seen." They're acting like we won the World Series because we tied them. And they said, "But you remember how we told you guys you wouldn't win a game?" He's like, they just flew in a whole nother team. So you guys are going to play the Cuban national team tomorrow." And we're like, "Cool, let's play them." They beat us like 20-1 and like 17-1 the next day. The next two games, it was a 3-game series. So I always joke around because the second team we played, it had Major League All-Stars everywhere. Cespedes played, Rudia played. The Cuban baseball historian was sitting in the dugout telling us all about Yoenis Cespedes, who's the center fielder for game 2 and 3. They had the best catcher I've ever seen. I don't even know his name. Martin, the guy that played for the Dodgers, was the second baseman in game 2 and 3. And when I say they brought out some arms that like I've never seen before, they brought out a big league bullpen on us. And every single guy after the 6th inning was throwing 100 with some sharp off-speed stuff. I mean, we had no chance. They did like 17-1, like 20-1 or something. It was ridiculous. I don't even know how we got our run because we were a bunch of college kids playing against a bunch of pros, you know. And so anyway, Cuba was phenomenal. We also got to watch a game where the Industrialis, which is like their Yankees, played somebody in downtown Havana. It was phenomenal. I mean, great baseball country.
Wow, what an experience that must have been. So you manage a lot of guys now. Is there like a couple that stand out as like the funniest? Like even go back to like Delmarva and all these other guys. All I heard was like they're all just characters. Who are some of the guys that stood out as being the most funny?
Oh, Riser's pretty funny. He's hilarious. Now he's a character. JC Encarnacion was one of the funniest people, man. He always had something going. You know, Grayson Rodriguez is funny. He doesn't try to be funny, but he's funny to be around. So I'm trying to think about who else was. I mean, you're gonna have things come up, you know, through such a long season where somebody's gonna say something, but and I'm trying to remember. You know, one of the funniest people I've ever been around is Buck Britton, our AAA manager. I played with Buck and Frederick for a little while. One of the funniest people I've ever been. I mean, just not trying to be funny, but he just can loosen a room with the best of them.
One guy that I really wanted to go, this is going back to summer of 19. I really wanted, I think it's Nick Gruner, the guy from like Harvard. I heard he was like I heard he's the funniest guy ever. And then he just retired. Like
he retired, man. I hated to see him go. I remember him pitching for us. Had a big time job offer in, I think, like downtown New York City or something, because he's a really brilliant guy. Went to Harvard, pitched for us. But it's hard to. It's a tough question for the manager. See, I wish you'd asked me that question if I had like been the hitting guy, because the hitting guy always knows the team like a little bit better. That's why you need good hitting guys and good developmental coaches, because they tell the manager everything if they're good. But see, the manager doesn't know anything about the bullpen's personality, because when the manager walks in, all the bullpen just goes like this, like
the boss is here. Yeah,
the boss. Hey, he might call down. I mean, most of the time it's really not like that. You want to hear what they say, and because being in the bullpen was some of the funnest times I ever had in my life, when I was sitting down in the bullpen for the game, catching the guys, whatever. You get to figure out who's who. Well, the manager never sees that, because when there's any chance that the manager's within earshot, everybody's just all business, which is good, but like, you don't hear the joke, like, oh, manager's going to say the punchline, like, so.
Oh, that's so funny. So I have one last question for you. The last time we talked, I got a little workout advice, and I was wondering if you can give me one last workout tip. This is for somebody who hypothetically has a hard time keeping weight on, 5'10" or like 5'10-ish, 140, just has never gained an ounce in his entire life. Like, what would you tell like somebody who's potentially being called string bean his entire life? What would you tell somebody like him to try to help not just be 140 pounds the rest of my life? His life.
Oh, no. Look, that's not a bad thing. Come on. As you get older, you're gonna love that. You're gonna love that string bean when that milkshake doesn't put that spare tire on you. You know what? A lot of people say, carbs are the biggest enemy. So just carb out, man. Go get you a big old double with some French fries and a Frosty like once a week. Not the best health advice, but if you're trying to put on a couple of pounds and you do the work, you can do that,
It's super frustrating. Do you see that with guys you coach too, that like you have a guy and it's like, wow, I just wish you would add a little bit more muscle, or like, I wish you would fill out, I guess is what like the professional term is. Like, he really needs to fill out. Like, does a former strength and conditioning coach and you kind of take over, and you ever say like, hey man, just go get a Frosty every now and again?
You know what? Sometimes it does. Probably the other way around, though. I see what out of my lens, that sometimes it's more about how they move and how their running form is, or vice versa. Like, man, I wish that guy would trim it up a little bit. But the beauty of our game now is that so many people are being evaluated with such good metrics. It really don't matter what you look like. You could be a string bean and you have a high OPS, you're gonna have a job. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna do it. Same thing with pitching stuff. You got good weapons, and your stuff grades out good stuff wise. Well, you look however you want, and that's the beauty of where baseball is going. But I must say, sometimes when I see a guy that looks really bad in uniform, I'm like, man, really? That dude can hit. He needs to trim it up.
That's what I'm saying. You have like a guy where it's just no legs and it's just all pants. It's just all fabric on him. That's like, it's hard. It's hard to walk it. Like, baseball uniforms are supposed to make everybody look great, but then you just have the guy, it just looks like he's wearing Jinkos, but it's not, it's just his legs. So,
sometimes Major League Baseball uniforms make you look a lot better than minor league ones do. Well, them Rollins ain't the Majestics. I know that.
All right. Last question. And then, I'll let you run. I'm so sorry for Alabama. I tweeted at you that I put a hefty wager, a responsible wager on Alabama to win versus Georgia. What's the mood of an Alabama fan right now?
I think we're good. I think that all the sane Alabama fans just understand how great of a time it is to be an Alabama football fan. What we accomplished by beating Georgia in the SEC championship game, and also beating Auburn. I think most of the people that I talk to are really proud of the season we had. It was a great season. It was another, our quarterback won a Heisman Trophy, never been done before. Which truthfully, nobody in Alabama cares about a Heisman Trophy. They want to win a national championship. But the thing about it is, the SEC, I think everybody's saying the same thing. The SEC and the playoff committee's got to do something. Because, you can't play Georgia for the SEC championship game and then turn around and play them in the national championship game. It's nice, but you're just not going to beat them. They're just too good. You know, I mean, Alabama and Georgia are the opponents. You're not going to beat the same team twice. And, you know, we happened to beat them because we had to beat them to get in. And then they beat us because they're a great team. And I think that's sort of what Alabama fans are feeling like. Dude, Georgia's a great team. Great team. You know, Kirby Smart coaches just like Nick Saban. He's a Nick Saban carbon copy. And he's got a great thing going. So, like, I don't think any Alabama fans mad because we got beat by Georgia. Now, we got beat by Live Monroe again, there'd be some mad people up in here. But if we get beat by Georgia, who's an elite team, we got 20 NFL players, like, anybody mad. You know, we're going to get somebody next year, though.
You're right, because gosh, yeah, it just Alabama, the expectations are so high right now. Obviously, as they should be, because you guys are the best team in the history of college football. But yeah, it does kind of sting when little brother Georgia and Kirby Smart and that visor comes in and just whips it just whips it. But this has been amazing, man. So we're looking forward to Bowie's season.